Step out of the vehicle. Now. Hands where I can see them.
Officer, I haven't committed a crime. Photography is protected by the First Amendment.
You don't get to lecture me on the Constitution.
Then you're about to violate it. On camera.
Turn around! Face the car!
Officer. If you keep...
The dashboard camera of the sleek, unmarked Ford Explorer didn't blink. It didn't judge. It just recorded the bright, sweltering Tennessee afternoon in high definition, capturing every frame of the dust kicking up from the gravel shoulder. Officer Kyle Bennett, 29 years old, and flushed with the arrogance that often accompanies a badge used as a shield rather than a tool, had absolutely no idea that the man he was pulling over wasn't just a motorist. He wasn't just a tourist lost on the back roads of Shelby County. The man sitting in the driver's seat of the silver sedan, calmly checking his side mirrors, was Marcus Thorne. And Marcus Thorne had spent the last 25 years auditing the deepest, darkest corners of the federal government. He was a senior field auditor for the Department of Homeland Security's Office of Inspector General, and he was currently on assignment to investigate the misappropriation of federal infrastructure grants, specifically the very bridge he had just been photographing. Before we get into the details of this confrontation that would eventually make headlines across the nation, I need you to do something for me. Pause for a second. Look at the subscribe button. If you believe that no badge should grant someone the right to trample on the Constitution, go ahead and click it. It helps us tell these stories. And tell me in the comments, do you think officers should be required to carry personal liability insurance? Let's get back to the road. Marcus Thorne was 54 years old. He was a man who appreciated order. He wore a crisp white button-down shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows revealing forearms that had once played linebacker for a state university, but now spent more time resting on polished conference tables. He wasn't flashy. He drove a rental car, a nondescript Chevrolet Malibu. He had stopped near the crumbling foundations of the Miller Creek Bridge to take evidentiary photos of the rusted rebar evidence that the $3 million allocated for its repair had gone somewhere else. He had just merged back onto the highway when the blue lights exploded in his rearview mirror. Thorne didn't panic. He didn't slam on the brakes. He signaled right, slowed down gradually, and pulled onto the wide, grassy shoulder, ensuring he was far enough away from traffic to be safe. He put the car in park. He turned off the engine. He rolled down all 4 windows, a habit from his days training federal agents to provide maximum visibility. Then he placed his large hands on the top of the steering wheel, fingers spread wide. Officer Bennett pulled up behind him. Bennett was young, fit, and bored. He had been patrolling this stretch of highway for 4 hours with nothing to show for it but a speeding ticket he'd written to a grandmother. He saw the out-of-state plates on the rental. He saw the black driver. He saw the camera equipment on the passenger seat. In Bennett's mind, he didn't see a federal auditor. He saw a suspicious character. He saw an opportunity to exercise authority. Bennett stepped out of his cruiser. He adjusted his belt, the leather creaking in the silence of the afternoon. He walked with that specific swagger chest out, hand resting near the holster of his Glock 19. He didn't approach the window immediately. He paused at the taillight of the Malibu, touching it to leave his fingerprint, a tactic from the academy. Then he moved to the driver's window. Thorne watched him in the side mirror. He saw the posture. He saw the aggressive set of the jaw. He knew exactly what was coming. "Driver," Bennett said, his voice loud, projecting for the benefit of his own body camera. "Keep your hands where I can see them." Thorne didn't move his head. He spoke calmly, his voice a deep, resonant baritone that had silenced boardrooms in D.C. "My hands are on the wheel, officer. The engine is off. How can I help you this afternoon? I need to see your license registration and proof of insurance. Do not reach for them until I tell you to." Thorne remained perfectly still. He turned his head slowly to look Bennett in the eye. "Officer, before I reach for anything, I'd like to know the reason for this stop. I was traveling 45 in a 55 zone. I signaled my merge. My taillights are functional. What is the articulable, reasonable suspicion for this detention?" Bennett blinked. He wasn't used to questions. He was used to yes, sir, and sorry, sir. The question hung in the hot air between them, heavy and dangerous. Bennett leaned in closer, invading the space of the open window. The smell of chewing tobacco and cheap cologne drifted into the car. I didn't ask you for a speech, sir. I asked for your identification. Now are you going to comply, or do I need to remove you from the vehicle? Thorne didn't flinch. He had stared down cartel money launderers and corrupt senators. A 29-year-old patrolman with an attitude problem wasn't going to rattle him. Officer Thorne set his voice steady as a heartbeat under Delaware v. Prouse, you cannot stop a motorist solely to check their license and registration without reasonable suspicion that a traffic violation or a crime has occurred. I am asking you for the record and note that I have a dash cam recording inside this vehicle as well. What crime do you suspect me of committing? Bennett's face turned a shade of red that matched the stripes on the American flag patch on his shoulder. He felt his authority slipping, and like many young officers with poor training, he tried to grab it back with volume. You were observed acting suspiciously near the Miller Creek Bridge, taking photographs of critical infrastructure. In this day and age, that's a security concern. Now give me the ID. Thorne almost smiled, suspiciously, taking photos of a bridge that was falling apart. Photography is a First Amendment protected activity, officer. The bridge is visible from a public roadway. Taking pictures of it is not a crime. It is not reasonable suspicion of terrorism. It is not reasonable suspicion of trespassing. Unless you can articulate a specific crime I am about to commit, have committed, or am committing. This is a consensual encounter, and I am declining your request for ID. It's not a request, Bennett shouted. He took a step back and unsnapped the retention strap on his holster. This is a lawful order. You are operating a motor vehicle on a public roadway. You are required to identify yourself. I am required to display my license if I have been lawfully stopped for a violation of the Motor Vehicle Code. Thorne corrected him, reciting the statute from memory. Since you have admitted this stop is based on my photography, a constitutionally protected activity and not a traffic violation, the stop is unlawful. I am not refusing to identify myself to a lawful authority. I am refusing to validate an unlawful seizure of my person. Last warning, Bennett yelled. Get out of the car. Have you ever been in a situation where you knew you were right, but the person with the gun didn't care? It's a terrifying feeling for most people. For Marcus Thorne, it was Tuesday. He knew exactly where this was going. He knew the case law, Terry v. Ohio Hebel v. 6th Judicial District Court. He knew that Bennett was digging a hole so deep that the entire department was going to fall into it. I will step out of the vehicle if you are ordering me to do so, Thorne said, keeping his hands visible. However, I am doing so under duress and out of fear for my physical safety, not because I consent to this detention. Thorne undid his seatbelt with slow, deliberate movements. He used his left hand to open the door handle. As the door swung open, Bennett stepped back, his hand now fully gripping the handle of his service weapon. Turn around, Bennett barked. Face the car. Thorne complied slowly. He stood 6'2", taller than the officer. He was dressed in slacks and that crisp white shirt, looking every bit the government official he was, but Bennett was too blinded by adrenaline and bias to see it. Officer, Thorne said, facing the roof of his rental car. I am going to inform you that I am a federal officer. My credentials are in my breast pocket. I strongly suggest you allow me to show them to you before you continue down this path. Bennett laughed. It was a harsh, nervous sound. Yeah, right. And I'm the president. You're a suspect in a Homeland Security investigation, pal. You don't look like a Fed to me. And what does a Fed look like, officer? Thorne asked quietly. The question hung there unanswered, but the implication was clear. Bennett didn't like the implication. He didn't like this man's tone, his vocabulary, or his calmness. Spread your feet, Bennett commanded, kicking Thorne's ankles apart roughly. Thorne winced slightly but maintained his composure. Officer, you are now conducting a non-consensual frisk. Under Terry, you need reasonable suspicion that I am armed and dangerous. You stopped me for photography. Do you have reason to believe a camera is a deadly weapon? Shut up, Bennett hissed. He patted Thorne down aggressively, his hands moving roughly over Thorne's pockets. He felt the hard rectangular object in the front breast pocket, the credentials Thorne had mentioned. But Bennett didn't pull them out. He ignored them. He was looking for a weapon or drugs or anything to justify the knot of fear and anger in his stomach. I'm finding out who you are one way or another, Bennett said. He moved to Thorne's back pocket and ripped out the wallet. You do not have consent to search my person or my effects, Thorne stated. Clearly his voice directed toward Bennett's body camera. This is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Bennett opened the wallet. He ignored the credit cards. He ignored the cash. He pulled out the Tennessee driver's license. Marcus Thorne. Bennett read aloud, mocking the name. Well, Marcus, you're about to have a very bad day. I believe you are the one making a mistake, officer. If you look in the other pocket... I don't care what's in your other pocket, Bennett interrupted. You wanted to play lawyer fine. You're under arrest. For what offense? Disorderly conduct. Failure to obey a lawful order. Resisting arrest. Bennett rattled off the contempt of cop charges that bad officers used when they had nothing else. I haven't resisted, Thorne pointed out. I have complied with every physical command. Verbal disagreement is not resistance. Freedom of speech is not disorderly conduct. Bennett didn't answer. He grabbed Thorne's right wrist and twisted it behind his back, applying a pain compliance hold that was completely unnecessary for a compliant subject. Thorne grunted a sharp intake of breath. Stop resisting. Bennett yelled for the camera, despite Thorne standing perfectly still. I am not resisting, Thorne said through gritted teeth. I am a senior auditor for the Department of Homeland Security Office of Inspector General. You are currently assaulting a federal official, violation of Title 18 U.S. Code, Section 111. You're a liar, Bennett spat. He slapped the handcuffs on Thorne's wrists, tightening them until the metal bit into the skin. He double-locked them, but not before squeezing them one notch too tight. By now, a pickup truck had slowed down in the opposite lane. A local farmer, a man in his 60s with a weathered face, rolled down his window. He held up his phone. He didn't say anything. He just recorded. Thorne saw him and gave a small nod. The witness. Good. Get in the car. Bennett shoved Thorne toward the cruiser. Officer Bennett, Thorne said, reading the name tag now that he was close enough. I'm asking you one last time to call your supervisor. Verify my identity. If you put me in that car, you are crossing a line you cannot uncross. I don't need a supervisor to take out the trash, Bennett said. He opened the back door of the cruiser and pushed Thorne inside. The hard plastic seat was unforgiving. The cage was cramped. Thorne had to twist his body to fit his long legs in his shoulders wedged against the door. Bennett slammed the door shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Thorne sat in the back, the smell of stale coffee and industrial cleaner filling his nose. He closed his eyes for a moment, centering himself. He wasn't angry anymore. He was calculating. He was mentally drafting the affidavit. He was organizing the timeline. Bennett got into the front seat. He picked up his radio. Dispatch, I've got one in custody. Non-compliant. Refused ID. Claiming to be some kind of federal agent. Yeah, I know. Sending a tow for his vehicle. Thorne opened his eyes. You are impounding a federal government rental vehicle, he asked from the back seat. That vehicle contains classified government documents related to infrastructure security audits. If you search that car, you are violating the Espionage Act. Bennett glanced in the rearview mirror, his eyes narrowing. For the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed his face. Just a flicker, but he squashed it. It's a rental, buddy. We inventory every vehicle we tow. Standard procedure. An inventory search cannot be used as a pretext for an investigatory search, Thorne said. And you have no probable cause to seize the vehicle. It is legally parked. It's a hazard, Bennett lied. He put the car in gear. Sit tight, Marcus. We're going to the station. The drive to the precinct took 15 minutes. It was a silent, suffocating ride. Bennett turned up the radio, blasting country music to drown out the silence, but the silence from the back seat was louder. Thorne didn't speak. He didn't beg. He didn't complain about the tight handcuffs. He just watched the back of Bennett's head. Thorne was thinking about the bridge. The Miller Creek Bridge was a disaster waiting to happen. The concrete was spalling, the steel was corroded. The county had received $3 million to fix it 2 years ago. The money was gone. The bridge was untouched. And now the officer patrolling that bridge seemed terrified of anyone documenting it. Thorne wondered if Bennett knew about the money. Probably not. He was likely just a pawn, a useful idiot in the grand scheme of local corruption. But pawns could still do a lot of damage. They pulled into the station lot. It was a small brick building typical of rural sheriff's departments and small-town police forces. A flag waved lazily out front. Bennett hauled Thorne out of the car. He paraded him through the back entrance past the break room where 2 other officers were eating sandwiches. They looked up, saw the handcuffs, saw the suit, and went back to eating. "Booking," Bennett announced, pushing Thorne toward the intake desk. The desk sergeant was a man named Miller. Miller was 58, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen every kind of lie and every kind of truth a human being could offer. He was reading a newspaper. He looked up over his reading glasses as Bennett shoved Thorne toward the counter. Miller didn't look at Bennett. He looked at Thorne. He saw the clothes. He saw the expensive shoes. He saw the demeanor. Miller's internal radar started pinging immediately. "What do we have here, Kyle?" Miller asked, his voice gravelly. "Disorderly resisting failure to ID," Bennett said proudly. "Guy thinks he's a lawyer, also claims he's Homeland Security." Bennett chuckled, expecting Miller to join in. Miller didn't chuckle. He looked at Thorne. "Are you injured, sir?" "My wrists are abraded from the handcuffs being applied too tightly," Thorne said calmly. "Otherwise, I am uninjured physically. However, I am being detained unlawfully." Miller looked at Bennett. "Did you check his credentials?" "I checked his license. He's nobody. Just some guy from D.C. "He claimed to be a federal agent," Miller said slowly. "Did you check his credentials?" "He's full of it, Sarge. He was taking pictures of the bridge, acting sketchy." Miller sighed. He stood up and walked around the desk. "Uncuff one hand. Let's get his property on the counter." Bennett rolled his eyes but complied. He unlocked Thorne's right hand. Thorne rubbed his wrist. The skin was red and indented. He reached into his breast pocket, the pocket Bennett had patted down but ignored. The room went quiet. Thorne pulled out a leather cred case. It was black with gold lettering embossed on the front, Department of Homeland Security. He flipped it open. The gold badge gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Office of Inspector General. Beside it was the laminated ID card with the holographic seal of the United States. Marcus Thorne, Senior Field Auditor. Top secret clearance. Miller stared at the badge. He stared at the ID. Then he looked at Bennett. Bennett's face had gone pale. The arrogance drained out of him like water from a cracked bucket. I thought it was fake. I mean, anyone can buy a badge online." "That is a federal commission," Thorne said, his voice filling the room. "And you are in possession of a federal prisoner without cause." Miller looked at Bennett with a mix of anger and pity. "Kyle," Miller said softly, "you didn't verify this." He wouldn't give me his ID at first." "Call the chief," Miller said to the dispatcher in the corner. "Now." The air in the booking room changed instantly. The power dynamic shifted so violently it was almost palpable. Thorne was no longer a suspect. He was the highest-ranking law enforcement official in the room. "Take the other cuff off," Miller ordered. Bennett fumbled with the key. His hands were shaking. He unlocked the left cuff. Thorne rubbed his wrists. He placed the handcuffs on the counter. "I want these logged as evidence," Thorne said, "along with the booking video and Officer Bennett's body camera footage." "Sir," Miller said, his tone respectful, almost deferential. "I apologize for the confusion. We can—" "This is not confusion, Sergeant," Thorne cut him off. "This is a deprivation of rights under color of law. This is an unlawful arrest. This is kidnapping, and considering I was investigating the misuse of federal funds in this jurisdiction, this now looks like witness intimidation." Miller's eyes widened. "Investigating the bridge." "The bridge," Thorne confirmed. "The one that was supposed to be fixed with the $3 million your county received in 2023. Bennett stepped back, hitting the wall. He looked like a child who had just realized he'd broken his mother's favorite vase. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I was just doing my job." "Your job is to uphold the Constitution," Thorne said, turning to face him. "Not to harass citizens because they hurt your ego. You swore an oath, son. Today you broke it." The door to the back office flew open. Chief Henderson marched in. He was a large man wearing a white shirt and a tie that was too short. He looked from Miller to Bennett to Thorne. He saw the badge on the counter. He saw the look on Miller's face. "What is going on here?" Henderson demanded. "Chief," Miller said, handing him Thorne's credentials. "Officer Bennett arrested a DHS senior auditor for taking pictures of the Miller Creek Bridge." Henderson looked at the ID. He looked at Thorne. He closed his eyes for a brief second, the weight of the situation crashing down on him. "Mr. Thorne," Henderson said, his voice smooth, trying to salvage the unsalvageable. "I'm Chief Henderson. There seems to be a massive misunderstanding. Please come into my office. Let's sort this out." "I prefer to stay right here, Chief," Thorne said. "In view of the booking cameras, I want everything on the record." "Mr. Thorne, surely we can discuss this. Officer Bennett is young. He's zealous." "He's dangerous," Thorne corrected. "He profiled me. He detained me without reasonable suspicion. He escalated a non-violent situation. He assaulted a federal officer, and he arrested me for asserting my Fourth Amendment rights. That's not zeal, Chief. That's tyranny." Henderson glared at Bennett. "Get in my office. Now." Bennett slunk away, disappearing into the chief's office. "Mr. Thorne," Henderson tried again. "We can drop all charges immediately. We'll expunge the arrest record. We can have your car returned within the hour." "Oh, the charges will be dropped," Thorne said. "But the record stands, because this isn't over. In fact, my audit just expanded. I'm going to need to see your department's training logs, your use of force reports for the last 5 years, and your records regarding the federal highway safety grants you receive." Henderson paled. You're auditing the department." "I am now," Thorne said. "I suggest you call your city attorney, and you might want to call the mayor, because your town is about to lose its federal funding eligibility." The next 4 hours were a blur of activity for the department and a lesson in patience for Marcus Thorne. He refused to leave the station until he had digital copies of all the footage. He made phone calls from the lobby. He called the U.S. Attorney's office. He called his special agent in charge. He called a civil rights attorney he knew in Nashville. By 5:00 p.m., the station was swarming. Not with police, but with lawyers. The city attorney arrived looking like he had just run a marathon. He tried to speak to Thorne, but Thorne simply handed him a business card and said, "Talk to my counsel." Bennett was still in the chief's office. Through the blinds, the staff could see him sitting in a chair, head in his hands. He had been stripped of his gun belt. His badge lay on the chief's desk. Thorne sat in the lobby, his laptop open. He was already typing his report. He wrote with the precision of a surgeon. Subject Officer Kyle Bennett. Incident: unlawful detention and arrest. Victim: Marcus Thorne, DHS OIG. Location Shelby County, TN. He detailed every violation. He cited the timestamps. He linked the behavior to a lack of training and a culture of impunity. Sergeant Miller brought him a cup of coffee. "Black right?" Miller asked. Thorne looked up. "Thank you, Sergeant." "I watched the body cam," Miller said quietly. He sat in the chair opposite Thorne. It's bad. It's actionable," Thorne said. "He's a hothead," Miller admitted. "We knew it. We tried to tell the chief, but his uncle is on the city council." Thorne stopped typing. "Is that so, nepotism? That's another section for my report." Miller smirked. A tired resignation smirk. "I figured you'd want to know. Look, Mr. Thorne, I'm retiring in 3 months. I've worn this badge for 30 years. I believe in it. But what happened today, that ain't police work. That's bullying. And I'm glad you were the one he pulled over and not some kid who wouldn't know how to fight back." Thorne nodded. "That's why I do this, Sergeant, because most people can't." The fallout was swift and brutal. The video from the farmer's truck hit the internet that evening. It showed Bennett twisting Thorne's arm. It showed the calm, compliant black man being treated like a violent criminal. The title of the video was simply "Cops Arrest Federal Agent for Photography." It went viral overnight. 5 million views by morning. The next day, the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division announced a pattern or practice investigation into the Shelby County Police Department. The announcement cited the Thorne incident as the catalyst. Officer Kyle Bennett was fired 3 days later. The termination letter was public. It cited gross misconduct, violation of civil rights, and dishonesty. He was also charged by the local district attorney under immense pressure from the public with official oppression and assault. But for Thorne, the real victory wasn't Bennett's firing. It was the audit. His investigation revealed that the $3 million for the bridge had been funneled into a construction company owned by the mayor's brother-in-law. The bridge was never fixed. The money was used to build luxury condos in the next county. Indictments rained down like a summer storm. The mayor, the city councilman, Bennett's uncle, and the construction company owner were all arrested by the FBI. The police department was placed under a federal consent decree. They lost their eligibility for federal grants for 5 years, a blow that forced the town to completely restructure its budget and, more importantly, its hiring practices. Marcus Thorne sued the city. The lawsuit wasn't about the money for him, it was about the principle. The settlement was reached in 6 months, $450,000. Thorne didn't keep a dime. He established the Constitutional Defense Fund, a nonprofit dedicated to providing legal representation for low-income drivers in Tennessee who had been victims of unlawful stops. 6 months after the arrest, Marcus Thorne returned to that stretch of highway. He drove the same rental car. He wore the same clothes. He pulled over near the Miller Creek Bridge. Construction crews were there now, legitimate ones contracted by the state directly. The bridge was finally being fixed. Thorne stood by the guardrail watching the sparks fly from the welders' torches. He thought about Kyle Bennett. Bennett was currently working at a landscaping company awaiting trial. His law enforcement career was over. He would never carry a badge again. He would never have power over another citizen again. Thorne thought about the system. It was slow, it was flawed, it was often broken. But sometimes when you pushed back hard enough, when you knew your rights and refused to surrender them, the gears would grind in the right direction. He took out his camera. He snapped a photo of the new construction. A patrol car drove by. The officer inside slowed down. He saw Thorne. He saw the camera. The officer waved politely and kept driving. Thorne waved back. It wasn't a perfect world, but it was a little bit better than it was on that Tuesday. This story isn't just about one bad apple. It's about the barrel. It's about the reality that for many Americans, a simple traffic stop can turn into a life-altering event. Marcus Thorne had the training, the credentials, and the confidence to survive this encounter and turn the tables. But what about the 18-year-old driving home from college? What about the single mother trying to get to work? They don't have federal badges. They don't have the law memorized. And that is why we have to share these stories. Because knowing your rights is the first line of defense. If this story fired you up, if it made you appreciate the importance of the Fourth Amendment, please hit that like button. It helps the algorithm show this to more people who need to see it. I want to hear from you in the comments. If you were in Marcus Thorne's shoes, would you have settled for $450,000, or would you have taken the case to trial to expose even more? Do you think officers should be personally liable for civil rights lawsuits, meaning the money comes out of their pension instead of the taxpayers' pockets? Let me know what you think. See you in the next video.